Can't hear it down the back? A bit more, Don. How's that going down the back? Getting there? We're okay? Step away from it a little bit. Is that okay? Thank you very much.
Good evening everyone, and welcome to this meeting. A little bit overwhelmed by the number of people that have shown up, but it's terrific. So we're going to kick off with, Lynn will do a welcome to country, and then I'll run through a few housekeeping bits and pieces, if that's all right.
This is not a welcome to country. I don't have the right to welcome you to country, but I can acknowledge country, which I would like to do. I'd like to acknowledge traditional owners, past, present and emerging, who are connected to this country. I'd also like to acknowledge the incredible courage of this country. Those of you who've been wandering around in the last few weeks will just have seen how amazing and beautiful the recovery is. While we're acknowledging courage, acknowledge the courage of Mallacoota and surrounding districts. Here you are, all of you, smiling and out and about. We've had a tough month, so thank you for coming. I think you're amazing.
Okay, thanks Lynn, and mistake number one on my behalf. That's an acknowledgement, not a welcome. But I do need to welcome also Bendigo Bank and Bushfire Recovery Victoria, Department of Health and Human Services, Council and Red Cross, who have representatives here just to listen in on the meeting and to basically see how it goes. Now you will have noticed on your seats a membership application. On the front side, on the reverse is an outline of the vision and statement of purpose that this draft group of people have put together for this process that we're hoping to get underway. And some of the early members, we've got Lynn and Mari over this side, Gail, Max, and Etienne, and there were a number of other people who are not up front at the moment. Some of the young people came along, so we had like a thinking group and a core group just trying to get this process into place. And it's a process that's come from Strathua, another community that was severely impacted by fire some years ago, and they've come up with some lessons learned and suggested that a way forward for Mallacoota would be to follow this process. So that's what we're trying to get underway. So there's nothing being formed yet, nothing's been set in stone, and the proposal that we've sort of outlined here and that we would like to see move forward has been supported by Bushfire Recovery Victoria, Council, DHHS and some other authorities and organisations. So the procedure that we're going to follow tonight is, procedure of the meeting is Lynn's going to come up and outline how we have arrived at this meeting tonight, and it's a step-by-step process that we're trying to follow. Now, I guess we as a community have been severely impacted by this event in many different ways. Some of us, like really directly. I think we've all been affected directly, one way or the other. Some a lot more so physically than others, but we're all trying to deal with it. We're still dealing with it, and we will be for some time. And you know, we're up and down and all over the place, but we are sort of setting our roles into the future and where do we go from here. And I guess we're looking, and certainly I'm looking, and many of us are, is to, as a community, pull together. And Mallacoota has always prided itself in its community spirit, and I guess this is a great opportunity to make that community spirit even stronger. So how we're going to proceed, Steve Pascoe, who's a mentor, who's from Strathua, and he's been instrumental in sort of setting up guidelines in this process, and we welcome him and his experience and thank him for where he's brought us to so far. So Steve's going to show us a short film that was developed by the Strathuan community. Apologies for that. And that'll be followed by a PowerPoint presentation which will outline the establishment of an association and how it gets there, what it's all about. And then that'll be followed by the opportunity for everyone to ask questions. Now, this meeting and everything's being podcast. For those who could not attend here, we've made every effort to inform people as much as we can. There's been some difficulty around that with poor communications and misinformation and so on getting around. We've been trying really hard. We have had some shortcomings and we're sorry we couldn't help that. That's just the way it is, and that's where we are. So, but seeing the number of people here tonight, I'm pretty confident that you'll leave here tonight with a much better understanding of how we have arrived at this point and where we are hoping and looking forward to seeing it going. So there'll be an opportunity to ask questions following Steve's presentations, and that will be moderated by Sharon Fisher from Bushfire Recovery Victoria. So she will moderate the questions, and we ask, if you have questions, can you please come up to the microphone, because as I said, it's been podcast, and the previous experiences with podcasts have been that people tuning in have trouble hearing what is said when someone from the back of the audience is calling out a question. The alternative is that if it's too difficult to get out the front, and someone will repeat your question into the microphone so that others can hear that. So once these questions, we'll do a period of questions. Once those questions have been run through and everyone's sort of comfortable with that, we'll then be looking for a show of hands for people who are willing to support this process that we are hoping to follow in the establishment of this association. Now, we did hand out sheets, or there were sheets on your seats. There's a stack of sheets out the back there, which are membership applications. We were preempting a successful outcome, I guess, a little bit, but we're pretty confident that we're on the right track, or certainly some of us are, and hopefully you'll think so too after this evening. So further down the track, we'll be looking at what are the urgent priorities, what do we as a community need to put in place going forward, what do we want to see happen sooner, what can wait a bit longer and happen later, and that's in relation to infrastructure and for both tourism, for the local community, sporting clubs, all the rest of it. There are a whole range of projects up and around Mallacoota. How do we set that priority? How do we best utilise the funds for those projects? And that will be up to the committee. And everyone will be able to, everyone who registered to join the association will have the opportunity to vote and to establish that committee. So I guess it's as democratic as a way we could think of establishing this committee, and we hope that you'll think so too by the end of this evening. So I'll hand it over to, who's next? Steve? Lynn, sorry.
I'm going to read a bit of this so I can make sure that I get my wording right, because it's important that you understand what we're trying to do. So first of all, what we're presenting to you is a suggestion, a draft. There is opportunity tonight to fine-tune it, and there will be opportunities later down the track for communication within the community. And I guess that is the whole point of this meeting, to help you, to make it very clear to you that what this is about is setting up a structure that hears the whole community. So if you want to be part of that structure, then we ask you to join the association. We ask you to think carefully about who you might nominate to go on the committee to do the grunt, the hard work, the pulling in the applications for grants, the talking to people, the conversing with people, but it's you, the community, who is running this association. And that's the main game. That is what this meeting is about. We're not talking today about jobs that need to be done. That'll come later when we've set up a process to gather that information in as democratic a way as we can. The job tonight is purely to look at the structure of this organisation and say, yep, we think this is a goer, or we want it tweaked, or no, not having anything to do with it. So tonight it's about I just wanted to talk you through the steps that we went through to get here, because there has been talk that this hasn't been an inclusive process, and that's absolutely true. There was never any intention of everybody being invited to give comment until we had some real thing to put to you. 1,000 people or 400 people or 500 people make it very difficult to come up with vision, purposes, ideas. It's just too complicated. So our idea was to start with a small group, get a thinking group going, get a bit of an outline, and then put that to a slightly larger group. So what we chose to do, as you recall at that time, communication was pretty complicated and difficult. There was no mouth. I know I live at Gypsy Point. There was no phone, there was no mobile, there was no internet. So what we did was we invited elected members of community organisations, because we thought that way they would give us an indication of what their groups might be thinking, and they could send that information back out to their groups. There were also quite a few interested individuals who said who'd heard about it in the traps. They were invited. There was no closed doors. If you wanted to come, you were absolutely welcome. But it had to be a discreet group because we had work to do, and it's really hard to do that with heaps and heaps of people. So what we came up with was something that Steve Pascoe had suggested and had worked through. So I knew Steve because last year I convened a bushfire fuel management group, and Steve came to help us with that. So he was already known to a small group of people in Mallacoota. We had a good working relationship established, so it seemed, when I heard that Steve was also a bushfire recovery mentor, that was an initial way to go. And Steve, as he'll tell you himself, was involved in the Strathewen fires. His home was burnt out, and he helped Strathewen to develop a disaster recovery process, and has gone on to do that in a number of communities, for which prizes have been given. So it's seen as best practice. So what is the structure? It's an incorporated body, an incorporated association that elects a committee, and that is given by that incorporation. It's given, and I'll read this out so you're all completely clear. It is given a formal legitimacy. It is given financial integrity, so everyone knows where the money's coming from and going to, and it is properly adjudicated at the end of the process. It gives a body an ability to apply for grants. Grants just require an incorporated body. That's just the basis. They don't want to hand money out to Joe Blogs. They want a body that is properly ruled. And it's an ability to represent the community. I won't go on about it, but that's the idea. It's an incorporated association. We have today to present to you the vision of that association. We will present to you the purposes of that association, which are all activity oriented, so that you can see that whoever is elected to the committee to help to make decisions is bound by these rules. And if we think the committee is not representing our community, then we can say to them, hold on, you know, these rules are what you signed up for, and if you're moving away from them, that's not what we've agreed to. So it's really to tie in what this community wants, and you'll find the vision and the rules on the back of your application form. Now I'm just going to invite Etienne Vandermeer, who's on the Bendigo Bank board, to speak briefly about the notion of sort of financial accountability, just so you know exactly what is going to happen with all of the trillions of dollars that are going to flow into Mallacoota.
Good afternoon, everybody, and it's fantastic to see such a wonderful crowd here. Steve, in talking to us the first time, spoke about having an incorporated body. We can have unincorporated bodies, and there are some of those organisations in Mallacoota that are unincorporated, but the majority are incorporated for reasons that I wish to now explain to you. The first issue is that it formalises and clearly articulates the purpose of the organisation. So it clearly says, and it's on the top of the document at the back, what the purpose of the organisation is. It's to assure our collective community can be heard. We will be an inclusive, vibrant, strong and safe community. So that's the first issue. It then has a whole lot of purposes underneath here which you can read, but those are the ideas that were put forward by the small subcommittee that drafted the committee. The rules that come from the government is 50 pages of rules and regulations that govern what incorporated bodies may do. The second issue is to provide legitimacy to the association in order to negotiate with governments, federal, state and local. Funding bodies do not give money to unincorporated bodies, especially the kinds of money we're talking about. Being incorporated also gives you the opportunity to open a bank account and to arrange insurance. Incorporation also formalises and makes transparent the rules that govern the association and which are available to all members for perusal. So the rules that will be published will again be a 50-odd page document, but every one of you that signs up has the total right to get a copy and look at it and watch how closely your committee follows those rules. And it's, again, for everybody. One of the big things that is a problem with what's happening to us is just like the gifts that have flowed into to the account, all the food and stuff that's coming. Money is going to come in that sort of volume. There's enormous money. People want to send money, they want to give money, but there's a very big problem with receiving money. First of all, you have to be permitted to hold the money and have the accounts that can hold money. And then you have to devise a very, very specific process whereby you can manage that money. Because some people say they wanted to go to animal welfare, some people say they wanted to go to Red Cross, for instance, and some people say we want to go to the Mallacoota community. All of those things have to be logged in, registered and managed. And at the end of a period, the committee will have to be able to account for every cent that they received, where they received it for, and where they gave it, where it went to. So it's an incredibly difficult and big job. And it requires incorporation because that then stipulates what you must do and what you can't do. It's clear. So you as a community can be sure that nobody is doing anything that they shouldn't do. So it requires financial accountability of the committee. It also requires formal and traceable record keeping. It also has to be audited at the end of each financial year. And the last issue that is important for you as a community to know is that incorporation protects the members of the committee from errors, omissions, troubles, insolvencies that might happen to the incorporated body. So that every individual in a normal company, if you're a shareholder to a company, you share the good and the bad. Incorporated bodies have a fence between the membership and the body. And legal action that is taken against that body can't flow on to members. So if, for instance, we decide to build a pyramid here or something big, if it goes bung, you, the individuals, are not involved. You should stop it before it happens. That's the issue. So that's the safety, and that's why it is important, and that's why Steve suggested so strongly that we do not contemplate going further unless we've got a body that's legal, registered, protects all our interests, and has clearly identified plans and modus operandi that you can follow, and that committee will be responsible to you, the community. Are there any questions? I made it all clear.
Two questions like that.
Later, sorry.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Don't start.
Great, thanks. He's taller than me. And thanks, Etienne, for that. That's pretty clear. I'd like to introduce Steve Pascoe now, who will run us through a short film and then through a PowerPoint presentation on these purposes and so on. Steve?
Thanks, Leo. Hi, folks. Apologies to all the good people out here. We didn't actually anticipate more than the first few rows of chairs. So we don't have multiple big screens, we do have noise. Thanks for having me along. My name is Steve Pascoe, as already said. My profession is emergency management. I've spent about 30 years working in disaster management. I'm a specialist in disaster recovery and community facilitation. I have a passion for community-led emergency management. And that's probably the least of my qualifications in this regard. In 2009, my town of Strathewen was largely wiped out by the Black Saturday bushfires. My own property, my family property, was completely wiped out. My wife, my daughter and myself survived on site as the fire passed us several times. Our house ultimately caught on fire and we were able to survive inside for a while and then outside around the house. So we share some stories with some folk in here. And after the fire, we as a community decided that we needed to get ahead of government. We needed a process that fairly represented our community. And a few of us got together and started talking about, so what do we need? And we realised that just the 4 or 5 of us didn't have any authority to do anything on behalf of our community. We couldn't speak on behalf of our community. We couldn't start a bank account. At one stage, someone gave us a cheque for $100,000 made out to Strathewen community. And we didn't, no one was going to say, oh, put it in my cheque account. So we decided we had to have something that would be squeaky clean, very open, very transparent, have the authority of our community to operate. And that was an incorporated association. We went down that path. I'm going to show a 7-minute video. It may not work so well, again, expecting 4 or 5 rows of chairs, not 3,000 people. So we'll give it a crack and see what happens. Oh, it's working. Down the back?
The local authority, the Monmouth Council, established an emergency response centre in Arthurs Creek, which is quite a distance from Strathewen, but there was nothing in Strathewen. And that provided a place where people in the community could go for support. But it also provided a place where people could meet. And there were a number of meetings held, one in particular by the Shire. It didn't go well. There was a deep anger because every time authorities seemed to open their mouths, the anger would bubble up. And people started to talk with one another about how we ought to, as a community, respond to what happened to us.
We got together representatives of all the existing community groups, and that became the basis of us trying to get a group from within Strathewen.
Anyone know what I've done? I'm afraid to touch any buttons. But what does it say? Do you want to perform auto escape? Cancel. Where's cancel? Yeah, just cancel or exit. On the computer. Escape. Oh, we are. I told you I'm a disaster manager.
so that Strathewen had control of its own recovery.
Rather than having something imposed, albeit by well-meaning people from outside.
Government would do it at some stage, but it would probably be less good for us than if we'd managed it ourselves.
It was clear from the outset that we needed some structure.
The most important building block of our recovery was the communications. We began that straight after the fires, and it began as a text service because it was important that we could get to everybody, and mobile phones were the only way most people had communications.
I remember 2 or 3 days after the fire, the first meeting with Bromley South, who was trying to do some sort of inventory of who was still around.
He said he was a lawyer, and I said, I think this community is going to need a lawyer.
We'd never met before. She got to talking to me about how we might approach the management of some of the monies that were beginning to be very generously donated by people from outside.
We had promises on one hand, donations on the other, and there was already a member of our community, Marilyn Langmead, who'd been an advocate for Strathewen over many years, and she'd begun publicising the plight of Strathewen, in fact from her hospital bed because she was suffering from cancer.
She sat down in the hospital and started penning this document to try and start collecting funds for the community of Strathewen.
And we were going to need a community voice to manage these donated funds, but also to respond to the government.
And seek some sort of mandate from the community to set something up for the longer term.
It was decided to call a community meeting at the White House, which became a relief centre. A very large number of people attended, probably 60 or 70 people. And the purpose of that was to consider the establishment of an incorporated association. And in order to do that, a constitution had to be agreed upon, and so a constitution committee was called.
More than 20 people wanted to be involved in developing the purpose and then the constitution.
Over a period of 2 months, thrashed out the purposes and the rules of that association. And I think the benefit of that was that everyone understood that we had made our constitution. We were satisfied with the process, and it had taken some time, but then when we met and voted on it as a community, it was strongly supported.
In going through that process, there was a significant degree of ownership built.
The association was incorporated, and then elections were called for committee places. 22 people stood, which is a significant testimony to people's interest in being part of determining the future of Strathewen.
Those that took on those roles took them very seriously. They respected one another, and they respected a diversity of view, and there were certainly differences of view that needed to be accommodated.
It's not that you become this ideal that all gather together and always are all totally inclusive and everybody gets on. That's not communities. They're not like that at all. It's how you stay together while respecting that you're a very volatile, dynamic mix of people.
In some communities, people were appointed to the positions of recovery committee. It was important to us that we had elected people on our incorporated association because they could legitimately speak with authority to government about what people in Strathewen wanted. Of that first 12 committee members, we had a really broad level of skills and experience. It was important because it needed to be a representative committee. It needed to bring to important deliberations that it was considering everything from legal and financial knowledge right through to how people will feel and do feel about the experiences they've been through.
My background is in emergency management and particularly around community recovery, so I became involved in the development of the Strathewen Community Renewal Association.
What was also important was that the local council had ex officio representation, and as did what became the Victorian Bushfire Reconstruction Authority. And those people provided a very important conduit back to those organisations. They didn't seek to sort of impose their ideas on the community, and it became a reciprocal relationship.
I had retired
Being of the community and having gone through the same experiences as many other people, it seemed to me that there was one thing I could do, which was contribute to the thinking about how we tried to determine our own future.
Right from the start, we knew that renewal was our goal. We needed more than just to recover. And renewal means more than getting back what you had in the past. You have to make your community new again. It will be a different place, but we want to try and preserve some of those characteristics of the old Strathewen and build on it. In the first year, we met just about every week. Most meetings would go for 3 hours. First off, find out what people in Strathewen wanted. Then we had to write a plan for the Bushfire Reconstruction Authority. While we were doing all of these committee things, we were also organising public events through our resident support group and all sorts of community activities. There was many meetings with council staff, Vibra staff, and attending the conferences that they ran, and it took the best part of a year just going through that before we were actually able to start implementing any of our projects. And it takes time. People are trying to get on with their lives.
I think the most important thing that Scribes achieved is the coherence of the community.
We were aiming for inclusion, which is incredibly important, and we were aiming for a level of transparency that you don't see in lots of organisations.
The scope which was certainly there for dissonance, for disagreement, for difficulty has been managed over time and managed quite successfully.
Right from the start, we tried to work to support anyone who associated strongly with Strathewen. You didn't have to lose property or loved ones to be considered as fire affected. It's interesting when you've been through a disaster like this that everyone from government through to your nearest and dearest friends want things to happen relatively quickly. Their aim is to get things back to normal as quickly as possible, and that often means building something. Recovery from a disaster like this and then renewing a community means so much more than that. People shouldn't be rushed into those decisions, whether it's where to build their house or whether to build a house, and communities shouldn't be rushed into things either. A lot of mistakes get made after a disaster from that kind of rushing. People need to take time.
Over the years we've built a website, an email service, an online calendar, and we've had monthly newsletters, and I think that's really helped people stay connected.
The experience of living through these fires and being part of this community, at times I feel almost privileged to have been part of it. We're now part of a very small group of people who have lived through a catastrophe, and that's quite a unique experience.
Being involved in the association and the renewal of the community has done me a good deal of good. I feel that I have managed to contribute something to the renewal, and I think that's been very important for my own recovery.
Before the fires, I knew a lot of people to wave to, but I didn't really know much about them, and now I feel I know most people to speak to, and I certainly know an awful lot more about what they've been through, and I think that they probably know more about me, and so that's a pretty good basis for a community into the future. Strathewen was a beautiful, beautiful place. And while the 2009 bushfires have taken some of that away, it will be a beautiful, beautiful place in the future. For some people, that means looking after the bush. For me, it also means looking after farming land. And of course, it also means looking after the people and the community and making it a place where people feel comfortable to live together.
Steve sets up.
Yep, back in business. Okay, thanks for Stephen. And I guess having watched that, you changed the name Strathewen to Mallacoota, and it is a beautiful place. It's quite inspiring to see that there is a way forward, there is somewhere we can go as a community, and it's up to us. But there is a lot of hard work involved, quite obviously. So, you know, it's not going to be an easy road, but it's a way forward and something that we together can actually achieve. So, another step in that process, Steve will run us through a PowerPoint now.
Thanks, Leo. Before I do this, I'd like to acknowledge the extraordinary courage of the people who started the conversation and kept it going. It would have been much easier to simply gone, this is really hard, let's not go there. They've weathered a storm of opinion, some abuse. It has been a wonderfully fun experience. It's been really, really hard work. They've stuck their neck out on behalf of you, the community, and I'd just like to acknowledge their extraordinary courage in doing that. So please. Thanks for that. So this is a proposal for a Community Recovery Association for Mallacoota and districts. It's proposed that the name of the incorporated, I'm in your way, aren't I?
Yeah.
Speak in the microphone.
Can you take the microphone over there so people see that?
Sit down.
Yeah.
Can't sit down.
See, there's no shortage of advice already.
Everyone's got an opinion. Okay, we okay now?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. The proposed name of the Incorporated Association is proposed to be the Mallacoota and District Recovery Association, with an ink on the end of it once it becomes inked. The proposed vision: to ensure our collective community can be heard, we will be an inclusive, vibrant, strong and safe community. The really important bits are the purposes, so these are the proposed purposes, and I will read them. I hate doing this for PowerPoint, but that's what I'm going to do. The association is established for the purposes of recovering from the impact of the summer 2019-20 bushfires. It will identify and prioritise the needs of the communities of Mallacoota and Genoa and Wallaga river catchments and assist in the recovery and rebuilding process. It will encourage and promote community involvement in recovery and rebuilding process and related activities. It will influence government bodies to work to meet the identified needs and priorities. It will facilitate communication of information between community government and agencies. It will advocate for individuals, families and community groups. It will attract monies and identify projects, needs requiring funding. It will manage funds and grants on behalf of individuals, families and groups within our community, and provide a focus for communication and coordination between community groups. So those are the purposes, proposed purposes of the association. They're on the pieces of paper that were on your seats. Membership, so there's a proposed membership structure. It's proposed that there be a full membership and an associate membership. It's proposed that the full membership be available to all persons owning property or resident in the communities of Mallacoota and the Genoa and Wallaga River catchments at the time of the 2019-20 bushfires, eligible to apply for full membership of the association, and for legal reasons must be 18 years or over. Associate membership available to all persons with an interest in the communities of Mallacoota and the Genoa and Wallaga River catchments at the time of the 2019-20 bushfires, but are ineligible for full membership. Are eligible to apply for associate membership of the association. Associate members are not entitled to vote at association meetings, but may participate in subcommittees, workshops and other association activities. The proposed membership fee is $0. The proposed lifespan of the association will exist for the above purposes until March 2023, at which time existence and the purposes of the committee will be reviewed. So it's really important to have a sunset clause to this association. It needs to be specifically around recovery from the bushfires, and there was a bit of a debate about whether this was something bigger, but to attract government funding to have a very clear purpose is very much about recovery from the bushfires. So 3 years, give it a 3-year lifespan, and that means it doesn't hang around forever. It means there's a clear focus on when to get jobs done. You have to get things going. At the end of 3 years, you as an association may decide to keep going for a bit longer. In Strathewen, we actually went for 5 years, which is about 1 year too long. The last year was really quite messy. Or you might choose at the end of 3 years to go, actually, we'd like this to be something else. And you might choose to change the purposes that you've already decided to be something else. But in this instance, the lifespan is 3 years, and after that, you can review it. The proposed committee will consist of a minimum of 7 persons and a maximum of 12. Committee members will be elected annually and may nominate for re-election. Committee members must be full members of the association and be full-time resident of the association catchment. So to be on the committee, it's really important that you be able to turn up to committee meetings. If you live in Perth, it's probably not a great thing. You're probably not going to make it to meetings, so it'll be a requirement that you actually live in the catchment and be able to attend meetings. Council and agency representatives may be invited as ex officio members of the committee without voting rights. So the committee would be 12 association members with other people as ex officio from council, from DHHS, from Bushfire Recovery Victoria as required. The election of the committee. Oh, I should be reading that. Nominations for committee memberships will be made available to all full association members. Nomination will be via a nomination form, which will include the nominee's name. Right, come back here a bit, couldn't I? Contact details and a short paragraph describing the nominee's experience and capacity for the position of committee member. So if someone wants to nominate or be nominated, they'll need to be seconded by an association member, and they'll need to provide a bit of a statement as to why they think they would be good people to be on a committee to represent you, that they would have appropriate skills, they have appropriate experience, and they can represent a broad range of people. Nominees must be full-time residents of the association catchment and be able to attend a majority of committee meetings. Voting forms listing all nominees and a paragraph describing their experience and capacity will be provided to all eligible members, so voting members. The election will be managed by officers of the East Gippsland Shire Council, who will also act as returning officers. So that keeps it out of any possibility of it being manipulated internally. It'll be handled by a third party and will be squeaky clean. Election of the office bearers, initially a chair, a deputy chair, secretary and treasurer. Office bearers will be elected by the committee at a committee meeting. A committee member or council officer will act as executive officer for the election, and office bearers will hold position for 12 months, after which they'll be available for re-election, or they might leave the positions and open them up. Proposed proceedings of committee. Committee quorum, 7 persons or half the committee plus 1. So if there's say 9 committee members, then it'll be half the committee plus 1, which doesn't quite work out when it's 9. Chair, not my problem, it's up to the committee. Chairperson will not vote unless there is a tied vote. So in general, the chairperson just chairs the meeting. They won't participate in decisions until there's a tied vote, and then they'll cast the decided vote. All association members will be notified of committee meetings, and committee meetings are open to association members. Minutes and resolutions will be available to all membership. So one of the principles of this process is that it is squeaky clean, highly transparent, everything is available for everyone. Subcommittees may be established as per the business rules, and subcommittees might be anything that the major committee wants. So subcommittees might be based on critical functions, for instance, communications, financial management. They might be based on community environments, social environment, economic environment, built environment and natural environment. Might be based on projects and tasks. So as the committee gets going, as needs arise, they might establish a subcommittee which is around social connectedness or rebuilding or natural environment. And there might be subcommittees for catchment areas. So it might include, there might be a special subcommittee for the Genoa area or Gypsy Point or something like that. That's about it. So it's time for some questions, Sharon.
Thanks, Steve. Hi, everybody, and can I just say before I start tonight what a fantastic and stunning view this is from here. I just think it is such a wonderful testament and validation of your strength and your belief in Mallacoota that you're here tonight supporting this process. So can you give yourself a hand? I just think it's fantastic. Thank you. My name is Sharon Fisher and I'm from Bushfire Recovery Victoria. I'll be your moderator tonight, so I'm going to be stepping you through questions and answers from the floor. And really pleased to be here on behalf of Bushfire Recovery Victoria. We're a very new agency, 4 weeks old in fact, and really are here to walk with townships such as Mallacoota in terms of a community-led response to your growth and your renewal. We really want to be with you around what you think are the ideas and the vision and the ways that you want to rebuild and recover from this event. And we'll work with all forms of government, local, state, Commonwealth, and all the agencies to come together to make things happen. So really pleased to be here tonight. Just to say, in terms of the sequence and the rules for tonight, I'm a hard but fair woman. And I'll absolutely support you in asking questions, but I would ask you, if you could, to come up to the microphone and pose your question. And in doing so, if you have a comment to make, can I just ask that you think about a way forward from that comment as well? We really want to make this a constructive session, so if we can just go with a positive way and a strength-based way of talking and asking questions, I think that'll help all of us. And if I'm hearing repeat themes, then I may just interject and ask you to move on so we give people time. So without any further ado, I'll just throw it open to people to step up to the microphone, if you will. Thank you, Steve. And just one more guideline before we start is that this conversation tonight is really about this establishment of the association. So if people do have any other questions that can be sourced through the other community meetings, can I ask that you hold off on any other questions and just come up with questions around the association? Thank you.
I just noticed, my name's Leah, I noticed that there was more emphasis on infrastructure and community facilities and burn recovery, and the word health and healing wasn't used in any of the information presented, and I think that's important.
Absolutely, thanks. So when we talk about 4 environments, it's a basis for disaster recovery in Australia and New Zealand. It comes from a community health model, social, economic, built, natural. Social is all about social connectedness, mental health, physical health, everything that makes social stuff work and humans work well. These other things are, but also these other things contribute to health and well-being.
So
we're going to have to play games, aren't we?
So we're assuming that we are running with a community development type model, ground up, with
Absolutely.
ideas and decision making.
Absolutely,
Yep.
absolutely. And it is what you folk want. There'll be a whole range of community engagement processes which, what are your needs? What are the things that are bugging you? What can be done about it?
So I've been sent up by a bunch of under 18s just to get some clarification on how we can ensure meaningful and consistent youth representation. There have been some of the members of the sanctuary of the local youth already taking part in the constitution and rule-making process. I'd just really like to know how we can make sure that the youth have a voice at all stages, even if, and if there's a possibility to make an allowance for a representative to be on the committee specifically for that purpose.
We've had a bit of a conversation about this already, and look, absolutely and completely agree with you. As you know, we've had some young people invited onto a couple of the working parties. Personally, I'm totally committed to it. It is up to the association and the committee to work out how they structure the way things work, the way things feed into each other. But I would certainly be recommending that there would be places for associate members on the committees where it was appropriate. Certainly, there's the potential for a working party or an advisory group of youth. And I think that, as I say, I'm not the committee, I'm not the association, but certainly I think that would be the absolute best way to go.
Thanks. And also, would that be part of the election process itself, or would that be? I know that this is not the. Okay, ex officio said. Okay, so it's going to be. Thank you very much.
So mine's a two-parter. Part one was because I can't remember, what is the population of Strathura? And part two was the 7 to 12 estimate, the estimate of 7 to 12 committee members based on your expectation of a much smaller number of people being here, and maybe see if you are comfortable in, I'm really interested in why there was such a vast underestimation of how many people would be here, because I think for me that perhaps goes to a little bit about the way the group has thought.
I just think it's fantastic that so many people turned up. It was,
Why is everybody so surprised? I don't think that's not fantastic.
Yes, that's me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The committee number is a workable number. If you have a committee of 30 people, it probably won't work. It's not related to the number of people in Strathura or the number of people in Mallacoota.
No,
I think it's just I suggest it's a workable number, but it's a proposal. So if there's a general discussion that we need more, but you will have ex officio members, you might have representatives of special groups, of advisory committees. So you could well end up with 20 people around the table every meeting.
Too many.
So, which is starting to get sizable, it's starting to get kind of hard. So So a number, you want more than 7, whether it's more than 12, but I think it's a nice number to play with.
And no one, what about the expectation, the vast underestimation by the people who set this up, the vast underestimation of people who would turn up here tonight? That interests me.
I don't think there's any answer to that. Did you want to is any answer to that? It was a surprise to me. I was massively impressed. I think this is just a wonderful thing. That was all. Yep.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions or comments?
My name's Peter. Thank you for the group so far. You've got an amazing job done today. Keep going. Secondly, 2 questions if I may. First question is the ballot or the election process. I think we need a bit more detail on how that would work. And secondly, within that little paragraph of description of about the person, we would like to see what groups, clubs and associations they've been associated with in the last 5 years, so that again we can get that youth balance and across the board whole community input.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yep.
Does anyone need to comment on that? I think that's
the ballot process.
One thing it wasn't it?
Just
the ballot? Is it
The ballot will happen if we get approval to go ahead. Sorry, we can't hear you.
So the election process will be run along Joint Electoral Commission guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
How would you like to know about more detail?
The duration this is going to take, what length of time are we talking from nomination to election?
Yep.
How we get that information out again, you know, election, we've got media, everything like that. This is Mallacoota.
I think so. The point of tonight is to, you know, are we going to form an association or not?
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of the question. If the association is going ahead, then we'll need to work on that stuff, and then we'll communicate that out. I think is probably the best way of doing that.
Okay, so as a group, we get your commitment that is everybody's got an input into that.
Absolutely. So the one of the really important parts of forming an association is that there is a mailing list, a communication stream. So if you're on the association, you should receive all information. So if you sign the paper, put your postal address or an email, then you'll get the detail about how the election will work.
Okay, thank you.
My name's Liza. My questions are around timing, and they're threefold. In your discussions, I'm just wondering if you had any sense of what sort of time frame these processes ought to take. For example, how long will it take to get the rules finalised? And once we've given a go-ahead for it all to happen, how long will it take to get the rules finalised and the body to be incorporated? Secondly, when would you be envisaging having the election process? And thirdly, in the interim, before all that happens and bank accounts get established and everything, this is probably a question for you, Steve, because you've been through it before. What happens to all the donations, particularly financial donations, that are pouring in, we hope? Thank you.
Last question first. The donations are sitting wherever the donations are sitting. It's not held by anyone here at this stage. They are just where they are. Second time frame
for incorporation and for getting the election process underway.
The association must form. An election process must be developed, which is the previous question. A committee must form who will then pursue the incorporation. the incorporation can't happen before there's a committee.
And the committee can't happen before there's an election?
Correct.
Okay, so you can have an election for an unincorporated, not existing association?
You can have that must be the process. You have to have a committee to apply for incorporation.
Okay, I understand. Thank you very much.
Timing, I don't know. With the association forming, my thoughts are maybe holding, waiting 2 weeks for all membership to come in, and then starting the election process from there. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah.
Okay, 2 weeks, and then we'll start getting some information out about the election process.
Thank you very much.
Sweet.
But also wanting to say that membership to the association doesn't close off after 2 weeks. So 6 months down the track, if you think that you want to join, and you're quite able to do so.
My question's about the name of the association. My name's Peter. As a Mallacoota resident, I'm often very frustrated by our dealings with council, and because we're so far away and we've got a small population, we tend to get left out. I would like the group to consider calling this group the Mallacoota, Genoa and District Recovery Association, on the basis that Genoa is the second largest grouping after Mallacoota, and it's substantially smaller, and we need to make sure we get them on board, and we need to let them know that we really do care about them and we want them to be involved.
And Gypsy Point.
So we're just answering that question.
We have spoken to people in Genoa, and it was upon their request that we said Mallacoota and District, and they were happy that they didn't want Mallacoota District. And the other thing that we have to remember is that it is only a proposed name. The committee might construct a completely different name, but there has been a lot of discussion about the name, and as Steve points out, it needs to be specifically about what our intention is, and our intention is for recovery, and then other things can develop in the future.
Hi, my name's Dave. This is for Steve. Steve, and everyone really, the names are great, but we want action. We want at the end of this, no, I'm serious. To me, it's about safety. I mean, it's great to build everything back again, but I want to hear about Strathhuon. How is it today? Is it a safer place? Did you just rebuild? Did you actually do something about some of the hazards? Because to me, it's about safety and making sure that we don't go through this again.
So the actions to come out of this will be decided by the committee. So the actions will be decided by the committee, not by these folk here. This is just about forming an association. The committee will decide what the activities are, and based on your input, they should do great engagement, they should ask a lot of questions, they should get a lot of information. I would be surprised if safety wasn't one of the issues that you identified. Strathhuon's a bit off topic, but yeah, we're a great place, and we've had 10 years of pretty extreme fuel management. It's growing back. It is what it is. We still live in the bush. Yeah.
G'day all, Marty Goodison. A couple of things. One observation about the election of the committee. You'll need to consider the fact that committee members may not see out their year, so what's the process for replacement of the committee member? The second point I've been asked to raise is about diversity, not only in the membership but in the committee. It's very easy to achieve diversity when everyone can register, It's a little bit more difficult to ensure diversity when you've got a small committee representing a community. So it's just an observation that we'll need to be careful. I mean, I could round up mates who all want to vote for one person because we like their platform or whatever. So it's just an observation that we'll need to take care to ensure diversity amongst the community.
So there's a question there about replacement if someone leaves mid-term. Is there any advice on that? Or?
There is no advice at this stage.
Okay, thank you. I'm mindful of time, everyone, and I really appreciate everybody who's been standing in the stalls, so thank you for your patience. So I'll open up for one more question, and then I think we'll move to the very exciting part of the night, which is the voting process. So is there a final question from the floor?
I just wanted to ask for a full explanation on why under 18s can't be full members. And how can I be right?
My understanding is that it's a legal thing.
For what sort of legal thing?
For signing a document, but I'm not sure. I reckon that's a pretty neat thing to take on board and chase it back through someone with a legal mind.
Yeah, it would just be really great to have, you know, the future Mallacoota having a voice.
Oh, absolutely. I think
it's in your hands.
I think it'd be wonderful to have a youth advisory group. It'd be, if we can get through that, it'd be wonderful to have young people on the committee.
And it would be fantastic having like maybe a youth representative on the committee. So no matter what, how many older people nominate themselves, there'll always be a youth.
Exactly. Don't trust old people.
Good on you, mate. Good on you.
I would just like to add our understanding is that young people under 18 perhaps couldn't be legal members, and it was in fact that discussion that led us in the first place to think of associate membership, because we really value the young people in Mallacoota, and in order to be able to help them to recover, we really need the subcommittees, for example, to include their input. So thanks for your question, Bryce. We're in good hands when Bryce is asking and doing.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your really respectful and constructive questions. I think it's really helped to move us along. So I might then move us to Lynn. Yeah? Thanks, Lynn. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, this is really basic. I'm going to ask for a show of hands. And if we up the front think that we've got a really solid majority, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to ask you to sign on for membership, and we've got a big journey ahead of us. Okay, would all of those people who would like an association, an incorporated association, be set up to move a way forward for Mallacoota, please raise your hands.
Just in closing, a reminder to you that there are forms outside on the table with boxes that and pens if you wish to fill them in here and leave them in the boxes. You will go onto a database for communication and be eligible for voting rights as full members. The other thing is that you don't have to do it here. There will be opportunities to find forms or take forms with you and leave them somewhere like at the post office or the Shire office. Or people outside of Mallacoota, we'll try and set up a way whereby they can print them off and post them back as well. I think, is that right? And lastly, I would just like to say thank you so much to all of you who've come out in this terrible weather. And
more the merrier.
It's great to see so many of you here. Thank you.
Thanks. I've just had a request from some people who are out of town, who are unwell. We have a few of our members in hospital. We have a few of our members without homes in town at the moment. If you know who those people are, if you're in touch with them, could you please make sure they get forms, the link to the live stream and all of that communication. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so that was just everyone wants to get up in front of the microphone here because they're all excited. Look, these people have put in a fair bit of work in the last 3 or 4 weeks. It's been a bit of a struggle getting their heads around it. There's been a bit of a resistance, which has made us a bit anxious and nervous. So the question was asked, you know, why did we not expect so many people? Well, we thought there was a fair bit of sort of resistance to the idea. And we're really strongly encouraged to see so many people put their hands up. It's sort of nearly knocked me over. And so I encourage you, as has been said, take extra forms with you, hand them out to your friends. You need one form for each individual. Don't take two, you know, one home and put he and she on the form, one each. It will have your phone number, it will have your email address, it will have your postal address so that you can keep informed. That's been one of the things we've really struggled with, is getting information out to people. These are 3 systems that we can use. We're trying to develop other systems. The other thing is that, saying we, you know, these people and others have been doing all of this work. And it's been pretty difficult because we've all been under difficult circumstances, trying circumstances, and we've all been, you know, struggling a bit one way or the other. And you've understood now what we've got ahead of us in getting this whole process, the election process, the association process, getting it up and running. If you think that you have a contribution you can make to that and help to get that process underway, please come and see any one of us and we'll stick your name down and get you involved to help make it smoother for everyone else. So, well done Mallacoota, you've never let me down, and no, it's great. Thanks very much.